Yeah, I've run on broken ribs. I've ripped my hamstring. Um, I've fallen and cracked my kneecap, and I at one point I'm a firefighter, like you said, and at work I was fighting a fire and a wall fell on me, and like my ankle got really messed up and it swelled up, and I got like cellulitis in my ankle, and I kept running.
Welcome to the Zero Quit Podcast, where we bring you inside the minds of elite athletes, business owners, and other guests. I'm your host, Covington, and through these conversations, you'll hear practical advice and effective strategies for building a more resilient mind. If you enjoy listening, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with a friend. What's going on, guys? So today I have on Andrew Glaze. He is a firefighter and ultra runner based out of Redlands, California. On top of just being an awesome ultra runner and doing a bunch of crazy races, the thing that struck me as the most interesting thing about him and that got me to follow him months ago was his running streak of basically 135 weeks in a row of running 100 plus miles a week. So it's kind of like a mouthful, but when you think about what that is, it's pretty nuts and a huge time commitment, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I want to start right there, Andrew, with that streak. So what kind of kick-started that, and when did you go, wait a minute, I've done this for a couple weeks in a row, I kind of want to keep this thing going?
I think COVID kind of did it to me because all my races
Yeah.
got canceled, and like normally when I ramp up, I do a lot of 100-mile races, and so when I ramp up for 100-mile training, I normally like touch into the 100-mile weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was ramping up like for races that then ended up all getting canceled in early. Now I'm like trying to. Is that 2020 that COVID all happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever it was like all of a sudden like everything got canceled, everything went like virtual,
Mm-hmm.
um, and at that point I already had like several weeks strung together, so um, it just kind of continued. I think in 2018 I think I did like 28 weeks in a row of 100-mile weeks, but they were like just straight 100-mile weeks. I would get just 100 miles,
Yeah, just
and
barely over, yeah.
this one's a little different because I think on average I get like around 140, 150 a week. So I'm
Yeah.
running more. And then
Yeah.
at some point in the 135 weeks, I did 18 200-mile weeks in a row. So the volume has been much higher for this streak.
Yeah, the
Um,
volume's pretty nuts, and you made a good point that, I actually kind of got into running around the time the pandemic happened. So a lot of, what you reference is races were getting canceled. And I remember a lot of, ultra runners, professional runners were doing a lot of FKTs during that time because that's all you could do, right?
right.
You just make up your own challenges. And, I don't know if you're familiar with Robbie Ballinger, but he's another ultra runner that kind of just had to make up his own Colorado Crush and different things like that over the past few years.
Yeah,
So
and I
you
mean, and that's
mentioned.
kind of like, just
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to run 100 miles a week, and so, as an ultra runner, as someone that loves to run, like COVID
Yeah.
happened, and like I still needed ways to challenge myself and like push myself, and I did like a self-supported 100 at one point for my
Yeah.
birthday, where I ran from where I live in Redlands to the beach,
Mm-hmm.
and just did lots of things like that, where I was like always trying to like kind of push the envelope of what I could do self-supported and what I could do,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh,
And
I
then
feel like that's. Go ahead. What were
no,
you
I
gonna
was just
say?
gonna say, and then it's just sort of snowballed. I mean, I didn't. You always think like, I mean, people do these run streaks where they run like 1 or 2 miles a day, and that's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not taking away from that, but I think with mine, it's like I'm always like, when am I gonna get injured or when am I gonna get sick? Because that'll
Yeah.
end it, Because running 100 miles a week is like a challenge, um,
Yeah.
and it
Well, it's not
hasn't.
something you can accidentally do or like
Right.
just happenstance and just let me just check a box. It's not really checking a box. It's a long. I was telling my wife the other day about who I was having on and your streak and everything like that. And I was like, he's averaging 20 plus miles a day, which is at a bare minimum. Even if you run it super fast on the road, it's like 3 plus hours a day. And it's a big time commitment. Like you said, there's a lot of runners. Like Hellas Adib is a really popular one that has this long running streak, and it's impressive in its own right. But to me, the 3 miles a day just to kind of keep a streak alive or something like that is very different from 100 plus miles a week. And like you mentioned, averaging like 150. So you touched on it's kind of been a slow build, I guess, over years and years of running. I assume you've been running for decades. But how do you recover from that much mileage? And have you had instances where you have had little nagging injuries, but have still been able to hit these totals each week?
Yeah, I mean, recovery is it's the topic everyone likes to talk about. I don't think. I mean, the thing is like I just never recover. So
Yeah.
I think the way I stay relatively uninjured has to do with. I mean, the slow build up. I mean, I've like you said, I've run for a long time, but also like I just run slow. Like I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I like find that I run really fast is when I get injured, and as I've gotten older, I've just sort of like embraced the like zone 2 grind, which is kind of like what you do in a 100-mile race. So I
Anyway.
just kind of like my zone 2 grind is what I do in a 100 miler. And so this is like my 100-mile training. Um, yeah, I mean, I recover by running more. It's like active recovery. Like I ran a 100-mile race, and obviously that's very, very hard on the body. And like 10 hours later, I go run like 5 or 6 miles, even though I just finished a 100-mile race. I just, for my body, I've always found that like as long as I keep moving, that it
Yeah.
doesn't like fail me. When I
Yeah.
take time off or when I like give it, if I'm just lying on a couch or something like that, it really it gets upset with me. So I just recover through constant movement. But I do like I have a clean diet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm vegan. I drink a lot of fluids.
Mm-hmm.
Very little alcohol, no drugs. Um, things like that. I think probably play a role in it. I don't know,
Yeah.
but like
Keep the body in check.
yeah, I mean lots of fluids is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean I have gotten injured. I've had all sorts. I mean, and this is like 2.5 years going on 3 years. So it's like I could name a ton of injuries I've had from I even
Mm-hmm.
at one point fell and broke some ribs and I just kept running, which, I wouldn't, people ask me questions like, well, what should I do? And it's like, don't listen to me.
Don't
I
listen to
don't,
me. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a doctor and I would not encourage anybody to do what I'm doing. But, um, yeah, I've run on broken ribs. I've ripped my hamstring. Um, I've fallen and like, cracked my kneecap and, I at one point I'm a firefighter like you said, and at work I was fighting
Mm-hmm.
a fire and a wall fell on me and I like my ankle got really messed up and it swelled up and I got like cellulitis in my ankle and I kept running. Probably shouldn't have, but so I mean I've never gotten injured to the point where like I couldn't run, but I've
Yeah.
definitely gotten injured to the point where it was uncomfortable to run and I
Yeah.
just sort of pushed through it. And I sort of
Yeah.
like I know, yeah, I mean, I know like how to push through that pain, and like I guess if it didn't get better, then I probably would have had to reevaluate. But it seems
Mm-hmm.
like every injury I've ever had like gets better, and then it's not like I'm not like weeks into something and it just keeps getting
Yeah.
worse. Like it's just a slow progression, and I know. I mean, I've run two 250-mile races. Um, the first one at mile 5, I tripped and like literally tore my hamstring and it turned black and blue and I had to continue on for 250 miles with a torn hamstring. And then the second time I ran it, we were doing like a technical rescue out of a canyon and this guy was like 300 pounds and we had to carry him out and
Mm-hmm.
I tore my hamstring again and I still did the race. So yeah, I just don't do as well as I could have done or should have
Yeah,
done,
of
but
course.
like it's just a little extra
Yeah, I
pain.
think I think ultra running it's like part of the culture and part of the game with, especially the over 100-mile races like Cocodona like you've ran and things like that, but pushing through pain is just part of the game, things aren't going to you're not going to feel great during the vast majority of the race. So that makes sense with what you're talking about. And I certainly agree with the kind of concept of like movement is medicine and just keeping the body moving and your body kind of is going to stay in motion. I think a lot of times, yeah, the more time you spend on the couch, the more time you spend, letting your body almost go stale. It
Yes.
doesn't help you. And the more you can, I mean, even on a basic science principle, unless, madman firefighting it through, concept, the idea of just keeping the body moving helps promote the blood flow, which helps lead to recovery. So perfectly makes sense, that the more you can stay obviously in motion, that you'll kind of keep going from there.
I think the hard balance is overuse injuries. So it's
Yeah.
like if I run a marathon and maybe I didn't train properly for it, and then I try to like recover with active recovery, maybe I'm more prone to an overuse injury. But if you like do
Hmm.
a good slow marathon training plan or whatever, and you
Yeah.
and you build your base like really really well, um, then I think you're less prone to get those overuse injuries. But I mean, a lot of people overuse injuries are a real thing. So
Hmm.
um, I can just tell you what works for me. But when people ask me like, how did you get to this level? I'm like, well, it took over a decade of running high
Yeah.
mileage consistently. Um,
Hmm.
and a lot of people don't want to hear that. They want the like easy, like, hey, all you got to do is do
Follow
this and
this.
that. And
Yeah.
it's like there's no easy way to sort of get to this without getting like injured a lot.
So do you do any strength training to help kind of keep the body in motion, or is it strictly running? I guess with time constraints, probably hard to fit it in.
Well, I mean, so my strength training is mostly like like running mountains or like
Yeah.
putting a backpack on
There's
with
that.
weight, because like a lot of these races I have to carry like 5 to 8 pounds worth of gear,
Hmm.
and then running with that. At work I do a lot of stairs. I mean, I do functional strength training at work, which means when I put my gear on it's like 75 pounds, and we'll do
Hmm.
like stairs in our gear, or we'll like drag hose, or like throw ladders, or
Hmm.
um, it's more like functional things I'm going to actually do at work to keep me
Yeah.
strong. Whereas like like bench press is cool, but when is a 200-pound object going to fall directly onto my chest and
That's
I'm going to have
right.
to push it off?
And it's equally weighted
Yeah,
across.
and it's
Yeah.
equally weighted. It's probably not. I mean, it makes my chest look nice, but beyond that,
Yeah.
like, I don't really do that anymore. I used to. I
Hmm.
mean, there's a part of my life where I did a lot of weightlifting and it was fun and I loved it, and it just. But right now, it's not really functional for what I do. Um, so my strength training routine mostly involves firefighting activities and firefighting training,
Hmm.
and then running mountains, running hills, running lots of steep stuff. Um, it's just strength training in a different way.
And so I think that actually, honestly, your job helps benefit your training because, like you mentioned, a lot of strength training and trail running is very different from road running for a million different reasons. But one of which is you are strengthening your quads, glutes, hamstrings, all these different stabilizers too, just by virtue of the trail and the terrain and elevation gain and all those things. But also, a lot of that functional fitness you're doing and all the heavy gear that you're carrying as a firefighter, a lot of that just weight bearing in general probably helps with bone density and helping you avoid stress fractures and things like that.
Right.
So that definitely makes sense. One thing I want to dive into that I think is probably the equally as interesting as how do you actually run the miles themselves is the consistency of it and finding balance between you're a husband, a father, and you obviously have a full-time job as well. How do you balance it in? Because like I mentioned earlier, it is hours a day just to kind of make sure you can hit that 100 total each week.
Well, I mean, step one is you have to find a really, really supportive wife that, supports your goals and like is a
What's up
fan
with you?
and wants you to succeed.
Yeah.
Um, she enables a lot of these bad behaviors, so I'll blame her a little bit. But I mean, I built my routines over years, so it's like
Yeah.
it just seems like what I do works for me. Um, a lot of it involves waking up really early, and getting the
Hmm.
miles in sort of in the morning while everyone's sleeping. I tend to do 2 runs a day, a long run
That's what
in
I
the
was going to ask.
morning,
Yeah.
and then a shorter run in the evening as kind of like a recovery run. Um, and then that way I have the whole afternoon all the way till like maybe like 6 p.m. to spend time with the family or the kids or whatever, and then I'll go get another run in, and then eat dinner, and then I essentially go to bed. So I go to bed pretty early, and then I wake up really early. Um,
Okay. So
I
it's
mean,
like,
that's sort of how I balance it. And at work, it's the same thing. Like, there's no consistency to like firefighting, because I'm also a paramedic, and
mhm.
we run 911 calls from everything from grandma fell down to, a house is on fire. And so,
Yeah.
there's no like rhyme or reason on what time somebody's going to call 911. So I still wake up super early and I just run around the fire station with a radio. And if we get a call, I just, I just respond.
It's
Like,
kind of like just any free time is what it sounds like. Just kind of fill in any time the gaps you have. Obviously, hit it early when you can.
yeah,
Just fill
but
in
I
from
mean,
there.
I'm very consistent about like an early morning run and then a run in the
Yeah.
evening. At
Okay.
work, my mileage is less, but at home I can run a lot more, and I just sort of listen to my body. Like, after a big
Mhm.
race, maybe my mileage goes way down, and then as I start to feel stronger and better, it'll go back up. And um, if I have a race coming up, I try to like look at what I need, like what my training block needs to look like. Do I need more vert? Do I need
Mhm.
more flat? Do I need, what do I need?
Yeah.
Do I need more miles? And I just kind of like mimic when it comes to that. But
Yeah.
um,
So you mentioned racing. You just finished up UTMB like 2 months ago. Was that your first time racing UTMB?
no, it was my third.
Okay.
Yeah, I got
Okay. So
I got real
regular there.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah. No, dude, that's a and I don't I feel like deserve it as much as the people who've been running for years and years and years, but it's still just such a bucket list like race to do one day or just to visit and experience and be part of that atmosphere because it just looks. I mean, it's more than like a postcard. It almost just looks fake, in every picture, every video of the place and running. So, what is that like atmosphere and running that race like, and how does it compare, I guess, to other races you've done?
I mean, it's like the best running experience. The only thing I've ever could compare it to would be like a New York City marathon or something like that, where you just have like
Yeah.
so many people involved. But um, the Europeans love ultra running. They even have their own like television channel that's just ultra running. They're really,
Yeah.
really into it, and so the energy is very, very high from the crowds. And you run, so if people that don't know UTMB, it's kind of like the World Cup of
Hmm.
ultra running. People come from around the world. It's an international race. Thousands of people run it, and you run through the Alps, starting in France. You run through the Alps into Italy, from Italy into Switzerland, and then back into France. So it's a big loop around Mont Blanc, which is this iconic mountain in the Alps.
Hmm.
And so you go through all these little villages, all these like little cities and stuff, and there's just people everywhere cheering you on. Like, doesn't matter if it's like 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll have like some little kid high fiving you, all dressed in Solomon, and like,
Yeah.
like we're like their heroes. It's totally different from the States. Um,
Yeah.
so the energy is obviously very electric. It's also one of those races where, because you have thousands of people, you're always with people when you're running it. Whereas like a lot of times in America, we have all these like quotas. You can only have 200 people on the trail and blah blah. You might be
Hmm.
running 100 miles completely by yourself. You are with people the entire time in this race, which is unique too, because you see the same people. You kind of build like bonds with them. You come into the aid stations at the same time. So,
Hmm.
but it's very, very hard race. It has 10,000 meters, which is 33,000 feet of vert, and you climb, I think, like 10 mountains.
Hmm.
And the Europeans do not believe in switchbacks, so you're just like straight up, straight down.
Straight down.
I, I,
Yeah.
I mean, like there's many, many miles where you are gaining or losing 1,500 feet in 1 mile, which is insane. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, I got so much respect, even more, than I already had, uh, for hearing that elevation gain because I just ran my first 50-mile race last Saturday, and that was in Crested Butte, Colorado. It had 8,000 feet of elevation, and those last, 6 to 8,000 feet just kind of like killed me, just like wrecked me. I felt like the steepness just felt brutal, and especially coming downhill. You think it's easier, of course. You still beat up the quads even more, and it was muddy, blah blah blah. But yeah, just hearing 33,000, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, it's almost like four times,
right.
and it just just embrace the pain at that point,
Yeah, I mean it's the and
endless
I tell
climb.
people all the time in these mountain hundreds, it's the downhill that kills you. You
Yeah,
really
yeah,
like I climb a lot, but I climb a lot so that I turn around and just trash my quads on the way down because I've had ultras where my quads have just given up, and it makes it very challenging to finish a race when your quads are like, I don't want to go down any more hills, because downhill should be like normally the easy part, but
Easier, yeah.
when you get into those higher, like downhill, like there's like a couple races where there's more downhill than uphill, and man, I tell you that hurts you.
I know. Yeah, you look at it on paper, you're like, okay, that's the section I'll pick up my pace a little bit, or
Right.
make up some energy. No, no.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
So with the races you do, I've seen over the past months, I imagine you do a couple a year that you'll pick out that fit in your schedule, that pique your interest. How does the high mileage, you accumulate an average per week help or also hinder you going into a race?
Yeah, I mean, when it's hard to say. Like when I was younger, I did better probably in ultras, and my mileage was lower. And now maybe I don't do as well as I could. But I mean, emotionally, I'm okay with that. I think like
Yeah, it's a trade
I
off,
don't
right?
I don't ever taper. It's hard. Like I had three really really good races this year. I ran Coldwater in like I want to say like 20 or 21 hours. But I won my age group, which is like I'm in the master's class because I'm an old man. And so that was cool. And that was on high mileage. And I think I had run 60 or 80 miles before the race that week. And then a week later, I ran Rocky Raccoon, which is a pretty competitive race. And I think I got like 18th or something, but I won my age group again, which was like pretty cool. And then 2 weeks after that, I ran Jackpot 100. And I got second overall and ran it in like 17 hours. So,
Still pretty competitive even with the insane
yeah, I mean,
weeks.
it just depends. But the thing is like all that high mileage and then 3 races back to back, like you probably would say like, it's not going to go over real well. And I didn't think it would, but I felt like each race I got stronger. Each race I got faster. And so like, I can't really explain that, right? Because it shouldn't happen that way. My body should have like broken down, and because I never really recovered, and I just kept running, but it didn't, and I don't know. I have friends that use ultras to run ultras, and like it's really works for them, and maybe that's like a secret. Like if you're gonna run an ultra, you got to run other ultras to get ready for that ultra.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like, just like we talked about earlier, I think if you consistently demand certain amount from your body's just gonna be like, well, we're either gonna crumble or we're gonna, figure this out and keep moving, right?
Well,
So
and
just
it's like a lot of ultras are, it's in your head, So it's like if you're emotionally in the mindset of racing ultras, then maybe that helps you out more. Because there's so many. It's such a roller coaster ride in a 100-mile race of like wanting to quit and feeling pain and being uncomfortable. That like if you're kind of like, oh, I just felt this last week and I know that this is what this is. It probably helps you push through certain uncomfortable periods of the race.
And what's the mental state like going into, let's say a 100-mile race or UTMB when you've done, okay, a bunch of like races in the past, but you even average a lot of times, the distance of the race, if not more. Does that kind of give you, a lot of reassurance going into the race? Or do you go in still with a little bit of butterflies about it all going
I'm
down
always
like one
super
day?
nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm nervous because one, so many things can go wrong.
Yeah.
You can step the wrong way, twist your ankle, and that's it. You can, eat something and your stomach can go completely sour. And if you can't take fluids and food in, then it's hard to continue.
Screwed, yeah.
There's just so many things that can go wrong in an ultra. It's so not guaranteed. So I always am nervous and anxious and butterflies before a race. I get this like weird dry cough that my wife always makes fun of me about, like before a race. It's like a nervous cough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if it was guaranteed, if it was easy, to me, like literally, it wouldn't be worth it. So it's the fact that it's so challenging and so many things can go wrong that really does it for me.
So where do you ever see this streak going? Is it something that you're kind of just, do you have like an end goal or at least something with it? Or is there a kind of dream, FKT or race that you'd like to attempt in the future? Some other crazy challenge?
Um, I'm just, kind of rolling with it. Whatever happens. I mean,
Keep on keeping on.
I've sort of started to like look at other goals, like as far as like I'd like to start climbing some bigger mountains. I love being in the mountains, and so um, get some 20,000 plus foot peaks, and
Hmm.
obviously that's gonna be more of a challenge to like run 100 miles and then also put on crampons and boots and all this gear and go up these huge peaks. So I don't think the streak defines me. I think it gets me attention, which is fine, but like
Yeah.
um, for me, I just am out here trying to spread the love of running, and running changed my life. Running is like the best thing that ever happened to me, and I know that it can change other people's lives, and so I just try to spread that.
So going back to what you mentioned with the mountain climbing, are there any 14ers in California, or what are those mountains like?
Yeah, there's a few 14ers. I mean, we have Mount Whitney, which is
Yeah.
technically the tallest peak in besides Alaska,
Yeah.
and then I think
Because I
there's
wonder.
quite a few technical ones that you'd have to actually like class 3, class 4 type stuff.
Yeah.
Right next to Whitney, there's Langley, which is the secret mountain that nobody goes to, but you don't need a permit, and it's
Yeah.
the same distance as Whitney. It's just a little bit shorter, and I honestly
Yeah.
think it has a better view. So
Yeah.
I spend a lot more time on Langley running it than I just don't like
Because
Whitney.
I'm almost thinking. Have you heard of Robbie Ballinger's Colorado Crush?
I feel like I have like during COVID, I remember reading about it,
Yeah.
but
So basically, and I think it was over 2020, or it had to be maybe 2021 because he ended up doing Leadville. Basically, he started with the Leadville Marathon, then he did the whole Colorado Trail, then he did the Silver Rush 50, then he did all the 14ers in Colorado, and then he did the Leadville 100. Um, so I'm
that's
like,
pretty
am I?
legit.
Yeah, it's somewhat respectable. And so I'm wondering, is there some kind of variation or something you could almost put together, mixing in, mountain climbs with your 100-mile weeks? Or I don't know. I'm just like wondering. There's so many possibilities. I feel like ultra runners get creative with, how much torture they can put themselves through.
Yeah, I mean the hard part is always the family, the job,
Job and family, right? Those
But
darn kids.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when something inspires me, then I like I'm like obsessive, obviously, and so I will put a lot of energy into like right now it's more of like I'm in like the research like role of like trying to figure out what I need to do to get to that level.
Yeah.
I'm sort of like for my birthday in February, I'm trying to put together a Kilimanjaro trip with my wife and I,
Mm,
which isn't technical or anything like that, but gets up there and high altitude, and
yeah.
um, there's a couple volcanoes in Mexico that I'm trying to get down and maybe do some speed ascents on that get up into the 20,000 foot range. So because that's like pretty close to home,
Yeah.
but we'll see. I don't know. The thing is like I've done a lot of things in my life. I've done triathlons. I've done OCR.
Uh huh.
Um, it always just comes back to I just really love running. So
Yeah.
um, I always remind myself of that as like I get a little like, oh, that sounds fun, and it probably will be fun, but at the end of the day, like I just really love to run. So
Yeah.
I might get distracted for a slight bit and like go out and climb some mountains or do whatever,
Hmm.
but um, at the end of the
I guess the
day,
sole passion comes back
it's
to
got
running, right?
running has to still be there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I get that. So I want to touch on just because I saw it on your story earlier this week, your near-death experience, basically on the
yeah,
trails. Do you want to tell that story real quick? Maybe get
yeah.
more
I mean,
details too.
so we have mountain lions in Southern California. I'll just preface that. And
Yeah,
I run a lot in the back, like in the trails, in the foothills and mountains above California. And I've probably run, I mean, I don't even know, 50,000 miles in these trails. And
mm,
I've seen a couple bears. Have bears normally run away from you? I've never had any like animal experience that's like too dramatic. Um,
mm-hmm.
One time I had coyotes chase me, but I had my dogs with me, so I think they were more chasing the dogs than they were chasing me. So, anyways, preface that is like I've never really had any like bad experience with
issue
animals
before.
in the backcountry. I was running this week, right above my work, which I run this trail like every morning before I come to work. So I've done it many, 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 many times. I'm coming down the hill. I come around a turn, and there's a very large buck running up the trail directly at me. And we don't get like big bucks in California. We normally just have like little forkies, which are like just like the little teeny horns. This thing had like a good spread of antlers. So at first I'm like, oh my God, look at that buck. And then I'm like, wait, why is he running towards me?
Coming at me.
Because,
yeah.
every time I see a deer, they run away from you. They're very, they're skittish and I'm like, and then all the things are going through your head. I'm like, does it have babies with it? Like, why? And then I'm like, oh shit, this thing's like literally going to run me over. And it was, it was coming at a clip that was like way too fast for me to really do anything. So I basically just stopped and screamed, like, and at the last second, it like just kind of like ran up on the side of the trail and went around me. So it's behind me now, and I'm just like, like that adrenaline, like, oh, I almost got hit by this large animal, probably impaled. And I look up, and chasing it up the trail is like a 180-pound mountain lion. So, which I've never seen a mountain lion ever. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of people seeing them and whatnot, but I've never, ever seen one. And so I scream again, and the mountain lion like gets within maybe like 6 to 10 feet of me, and then like takes a hard left and just goes down the side of the mountain into the bushes. So
you're like, thank God I wasn't more appetizing than the
buck.
Well,
because the buck is behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle, and the mountain lion, I mean, it could have easily just taken me out.
Taken you, yeah.
Or like if the buck had hit me, it would have slowed down enough where the mountain lion would have got the buck. So I mean, I'm just thinking all these scenarios in my head, but then I'm also thinking like, there's a mountain lion in that bush right there. Yeah. And so then I have to like, I put my hands up, and I'm like screaming, and I'm slowly backing down the trail, and it was, I mean, the whole week I've had this like sort of like near death, thinking about life and like, like it's been pretty wild.
The question is, did you go there? Did you go and run the trail the next day?
No, because my wife told me if I did, she wouldn't talk to me for a week. So
yeah, it's okay. That's every wife would say that. I imagine. Yeah.
Well, and then I mean I talk about it too, but it's like I ran the trail up, because what I do is it's just like uphill, and I get to the top, and I turn around and I run back down. So it's like I basically run till the sun rises, and then turn around and run back to work. And so I ran that trail at night with my headlamp, and that cat was clearly somewhere probably watching me and didn't do anything. Yeah. So we've had, I think, 2 mountain lion like deaths in Southern California, but it was quite a while ago, and they were both mountain bikers, and I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say like, tempt fate and say normally they don't attack humans, but normally they don't attack humans.
I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, it never happens to you until it does, right?
Right.
And in Colorado Springs, it's kind of same deal. Like, there's some bears in certain areas, but they probably won't really bother you. But mountain lions, I hear in like certain sections, and I'm kind of like, I'm just not even gonna go near them. There's other trails, It's just like, it's like not worth it.
And they like to chase things, right? I mean, they're a cat, so it's like, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, here I am running up this trail, and it's like, I don't know. I'm easy
tempting
pickings.
them, just Brett, Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on today, because I know, with such a busy schedule and with, keeping the running streak alive, it's tough to make time. But I appreciate you coming on, and I definitely, I think over time you have gotten more attention because of the streak, but you definitely, I think, deserve even more just because of how insane it is. So, well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And I apologize for the mustache, but we're doing a contest at work.
Yeah,
and we're all trying to grow mustaches, and I'm doing a horrible job, but it is what it is.
Where can people find you?
What's that?
Where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram at @amglaze, TikTok at Glaze Runs, Strava, I think it's just Andrew Glaze.
There you go.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right.